Hello YouTube. Get myself set up here. There we go. So I'm here with a big mushroom kit from Nearby Naturals. It's a big kit of blue oyster mushrooms that I grew over the weekend. I could see on Friday they were pinning out. You can still see a little bit of the pins here. So there's little mushrooms in there. So I saw a dense cluster of these little mushrooms coming out of the substrate bag where I'd scored it, and I knew that they were going to be growing over the weekend and I was going to be away, so I actually set up a GoPro, my little camera here, and got a time lapse of these things growing. So I'll show you guys that at another date. Hopefully it'll be a good one. You never know. These time lapses are kind of tricky because you don't know if the angle's right and all sorts of stuff. But what I came home to was a really fantastic flush of these blue oyster mushrooms. They are delicious. And they're huge. And so I'm going to do a little bit of kind of like messing around with the mushrooms with you guys and just maybe a little sort of ASMR type stuff if you want. But then I'm going to go ahead and harvest them and get ready to cook them for dinner tonight. But I just figured I'd show you what I was doing. So I'll talk a little bit too about these mushroom kits and specifically, what I like about the Nearby Natural kits. Hang on, mic free here. So here we go. So this is a mushroom kit, and inside it is a bag of substrate. And so the substrate is probably wood chips, and usually they use like sawdust, often from like furniture manufacturers. And I'm not totally sure where Nearby Natural sources their wood chips, but I would assume it's something that's relatively nearby, probably pretty sustainable. And they'll usually add a mixture of rice bran for nitrogen and gypsum to adjust the pH. And that makes it easier for the mycelium to colonize these substrate bags. And the way this works is they're probably growing up a culture of liquid spawn. So it's like a test tube that has liquid mycelium in it. And they'll use that liquid mycelium to inject into one of these substrate bags. And then over a couple of weeks they'll let it colonize, and then they ship it to you, and it's usually right at the point of being able to fruit. And you score the bag, and you keep it moist, and you'll get some amazing mushrooms. And these took probably about 4 days to grow to this size. They're starting to get some of them are really thick and chunky, like these big boys here. So that means that I want to cut them off before they get too much larger, because they'll start to get a little bit tough. And I want to eat them while they're still relatively tender. But let me take my mic off here. I'll put this down here and see if I can make some noises for you guys. People always like these mushroom taps. Rubbing the gills. So these oyster mushrooms are capable of producing a whole lot of spores. And I've been sitting here with these mushrooms. I was just on TikTok for a little bit, and I've been just like breathing in mushroom spores. I can feel myself getting a little bit congested because I've just been breathing in so many spores. And so I don't need to sit here and continue to breathe in these spores. I'm going to go ahead and just harvest these so I can show you what's going on. But it's a fantastic kit. It's Nearby Naturals is the company that makes them. If you want to check my website, I've got a discount code for Nearby Naturals. It's just Fascinated by Fungi, all caps. You can save 10% on these kits. I really like the Nearby Natural kits because they're 5-pound kits, so it's a pretty significant amount of mushrooms that you can get out of one of these kits. There's some kits out there that you pay a fair bit of money and you only get like a small amount. It's like you get your money's worth when you order one of these, and generally you're going to get 2 to 3 good flushes. What happens is the mycelium is consuming all of the substrate in the bag. So over time it'll fruit less and less because there's less for the mycelium to eat. But you'll usually get about 2 or 3 good flushes out of this. The first one is always going to be the biggest and the best. It's just the way mushrooms work. But you can take these spent bags and put them out into your garden to help build soils, Or, you know, if you're feeling pretty enterprising, you can try to mix it in with fresh substrate and keep the mushroom stuff going. But there is some issues with contamination you can run into. You have to have a pretty good sterile technique. So I usually leave the mushroom kit assembly to the companies because they have the testing and the technology to help make sure that things go well. I'm just trying to fruit some mushrooms here at home. So that's what I did, and that's where I got these fantastic oyster mushrooms. And I guess, too, I want to talk just quickly about oyster mushrooms in general. Oyster mushrooms are kind of like the weeds of the mushroom world in that they will grow on virtually anything. You know, you've seen maybe the videos of mushrooms growing out of like bathrooms and out of toilets and like in really weird places. It's almost always oyster mushrooms because they're super precocious and they can eat virtually anything. They're white rot fungi, so they have enzymes that can handle a lot of the compounds in wood, but they can also, Paul Stamets has demonstrated that like he can get oyster mushrooms to eat stuff like cigarette butts and petroleum waste, all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, that doesn't work super well out in nature because if you put oyster mycelium on petroleum waste, it's going to be like, oh, I don't want to eat that. I want to eat like the wood that's over here. So it's really difficult to like get these things to do what you want them to do, and instead they're growing like weeds, and they'll just kind of show up wherever the hell they want. And that's nature. That's what fungi do. They aren't doing stuff because we want them to do stuff. They're doing stuff because they want to do stuff. And so the reason that these fruited is because we gave them the situation where they felt good about producing a mushroom. Doesn't mean that they did it for us. And that's one of the things you have to remember is when you do home cultivation like this, be really sure to follow the instructions that come along with the mushrooms, because if you do what you want to do, that might not be what the mushroom wants to do. So follow the instructions for watering, for the temperature, for the way that you set this box up and have the mushrooms fruit out of it, because that's what will ensure you're getting the best product and that your money's value, too. When you spend the money on buying something like this, you want it to work, right? So I'm going to go ahead and carefully start trying to cut this off. I've got a really big chunk of mushrooms here, and I just want to work my knife in and essentially cut the whole thing off here. Oh yeah, this is good. This is good. Oop. Okay. Oh yeah. Oh, big, awesome cluster. Woo! Look at this. This huge cluster of oyster mushrooms that I got. Grew this from Nearby Naturals kit. Gigantic, delicious oyster mushrooms. Smell great. Nice and mushroomy. They still have tinges of blue. You can see that. When they're young, they're kind of grayish blue. And they turn a little tannish when you get some sun on them. But these feel really, really delicious and moist and succulent. Wonderful mushrooms. I'm super excited about this. So if you want to learn, where you can order these, you can check out my website, fascinatedbyfungi.com. Check out my link for nearbynaturalsfl.com. The discount code is fascinatedbyfungi, all caps. I'm going to go ahead and cook these mushrooms up into something really delicious. Check my Instagram to see what I make with them. But thanks for joining me as I talked about oyster mushrooms and harvested these. So should be a good one. It's very cool, right? Ew. Lots of good stuff. You can see the oysters have these kind of thick stipes and decurrent gills which run down the stipe. It's a characteristic of oyster mushrooms, but pretty neat. Nice big mushroom kit. So thanks again to Nearby Naturals, and thank you guys for hanging out with me. Have a good one. Bye.